Hey, this is Nick Millivoy.
And this is Jason Shadrick.
And this is the 100 Guitarist podcast, where every week we talk about one of the 100 guitar players we think you should know. Today we are talking about a hero of both of ours.
Yes.
We are talking about John McLaughlin, or
That's
McLaughlin.
right.
I've always said
McLaughlin.
But Johnny Carson said McLaughlin. And when I interviewed John, I said his last name with a PH sound. So I don't know what the right way to say his last name is. We'll probably vacillate between the two things. Whatever, you know the guy we're talking about. All right. So you want to get at us, leave us a message, hit us up by email 100 guitarists at premierguitar.com. We have a voicemail line that is always open, ready for your calls. And you can text us as well at 319-423-9734. And wherever you're watching or listening to this podcast, which is available at all the major podcast outlets, please rate, review the podcast. We love to see that stuff. And we would very much appreciate it.
That's right. Shout out to all the new fans who found us via Nancy Wilson's Jimmy Page story.
Yes. Yeah. That
big
got
uptick
a big reaction.
in that. That was a fun episode. All right. Today's episode is brought to you by Paul Reed Smith Guitars. For years, Paul was trying to make John a guitar.
Mm-hmm.
For years and years. Finally, in 2010, they came together and started to collaborate. And in 2023, they released the first official John McLaughlin signature private stock model. And what John said, quote, "Paul has the same amount of passion for his guitars that I have for music, and he's taken the electric guitar to another level." So indeed, PRS have been working to build the best instruments they know since 1985, right out of Maryland and through their award-winning SE series. So head on over to prsguitars.com and check out everything they have to offer. They just released some new colors of Lettieri's Fiore guitar.
Oh, nice.
Which are a nice little, a light purple that I got my eye on.
When I interviewed John for the latest Shakti record, that was shortly after, or that was at the same time as his private stock John McLaughlin signature model came out. And so we talked about that a little bit. And I talked to Paul a little bit about John. It was very cool. So you can find that on the Premier Guitar site by searching John McLaughlin. But yeah, that was a cool thing that just kind of lined up with that release. And it looks great. Looks like a guitar John McLaughlin will play.
That's right. All right. So thanks again to PRS. Now let's get into it, Nick.
Oh man.
We have a lot to cover here, a lot of different styles.
John McLaughlin's kind of one of the widest reaching guitar players in a lot of ways, right? Like he's done so many different types of projects and a lot of, so it's like, somebody like when we're talking about rock stars, they have a primary band or sort of a established vibe. So, you're talking about David Gilmour, you're mostly talking about Pink Floyd. We're talking about Jeff Beck. Well, he's done a lot of different things and had a lot of different projects, but it's always like this kind of, there's an angle that is the Jeff Beck thing, right? That developed. He had this thing. McLaughlin he's a little bit different. There's his electric thing. There's his sideman thing. There's his acoustic thing. And then there's his Indian music. And he sounds like himself in all of it. He has a signature personal vocabulary, but he covers such a wide breadth of sound. So we talked about this. What we're going to do is we're just going to sort of not quite rapid fire, medium fire, go through some highlights and just rap about what is so cool about a bunch of different sounds that I've just kind of put together a list of like some of my favorite things here. Let's start. And this is in semi-chronological order for various reasons. Some of them are flipped. They're not all in chronological order. But first, I want to talk about Miles Davis.
Miles. He played on a bunch of Miles records.
Yep.
Probably the most notable ones would be Silent Way, Bitches Brew, Jack Johnson. Those are probably the most well-known ones.
That's what I would say.
Jack Johnson is really interesting out of those three to me. That's the one I kind of gravitated towards the most. And that era of like Electric Miles to me is like I don't listen to it as much for the vocabulary, but just the vibe.
Exactly.
Like, like I'm in, like say I'm listening to Clifford Brown on Sandu. Like I listen to that for the phrasing and the vocabulary.
Yeah.
Because that's what I want to glean from something like that, or Jim Hall live or something, right? When I listen to these Miles albums with McLaughlin, I'm purely listening for vibe.
Man, yes.
I'm purely listening for what it must have felt like in the room when this group of cats were together. I remember specifically going to the, when I was a young kid, maybe you did the same thing. Our public library had a pretty good selection of CDs.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would go and I would check out CDs purely based on the album cover, on the words on the cover of the album.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's somebody I've faintly heard of that I feel like, oh, let me, and Bitches Brew was, I'm like, oh my gosh, this album says bitches on the cover. Like that sold me.
Yeah.
I was like, Miles Davis kind of maybe had a, but then when I put this on, I was like, I just sat there in front of my speakers and listened to the whole first record, the whole first CD.
Yeah.
And I was like, who is this guitar player on here? Pharaoh's Dance was the first track. And I was like, woo, who is this? And I just thought, I remember thinking there's no way this is written out.
Yeah.
Right? I was like, I feel like they're just making stuff up as they go along. But
yeah, it's a big picture sonic thing.
Exactly.
It's psychedelia.
You got to like step back and look both directions when you're listening to this record, right? And if you're that much of an integral part of the band that Miles is naming a song John McLaughlin, then
it's a big deal.
Big deal. I don't think I think that's probably the only.
Off the top of my head, yeah.
He definitely didn't have a song called Mike Stern or John Scofield.
No.
Like.
Do you know? I only learned this a couple years ago. And it's not entirely confirmed, but my understanding is that this is true. Do you know what guitar John used on Jack Johnson?
You're going to tell me it's like a Les Paul special.
It's either a Duosonic or a Fender Mustang. I've heard both.
We can confirm that. We have the ability.
Yeah, we can.
Within our powers, we need to confirm that.
Yeah.
Make a note. We're going to need to talk to the powers that be.
I think that's pretty interesting.
You're saying Jack Johnson or Bitches Brew?
Jack Johnson.
Jack Johnson. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting.
Interesting, right? And his sound on that album, fantastic.
Well,
those big chords, boom, bam, bam. Oh my God, they cut, but they're like warm and fat, and it's a little guitar.
Here might be one of my hottest takes about John McLaughlin.
Hit me.
I really love his playing.
Mm-hmm.
The one part of his playing that I'm not interested in emulating is his attack.
Oh,
his attack does not work for me. And I mean work for me as something I aspire to.
Okay.
He has all the technical chops, 10x what I could ever dream to have. But it's that attack to me that always, and it was less so in his early years, more so in his later years.
Wait, less so than you were interested in it?
It was less interesting to me in his early years.
Oh, wow.
Wait, am I saying that backwards? It was more interesting to me. I liked his attack more in the early years than in the later years. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I would say, I mean, I agree with that, what you just said, but I would say his attack is a big part of the multifaceted appeal of his playing for me. When I
not a hammer on pull off guy, I'll tell you that.
Nope. He's a pick guy. He picks everything.
He's a pick guy,
and that's something that I always. John picking everything is something that really like worked for me, and that was something I've really worked on to emulate actually. And my old band, Many Arms, we were together from I think 2007 to 2014. That was like my band. We played hundreds and hundreds of shows, traveled all over the place. And I remember going back when we started, we had a MySpace page, and our MySpace influences said Black Flag, Mahavishnu Orchestra. And those were the two things. We were trying to be like punk rock, aggressive sound, but with like that sort of thing. And John's attack on Mahavishnu stuff was like, that was a big thing.
See, that I'm into.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
It's the later stuff, post Mahavishnu, the later electric stuff, especially.
Yeah.
His attack on acoustic things, like when you listen to Friday Night in San Francisco or the Shakti stuff.
Oh yeah,
like that I could get my hand around, because it seemed like his attack was more articulated on acoustic guitar than it was with, because he also later in his life just forget the amps.
Right.
I'm just going DI. I'm not even using, Nick. I'm going to tell you, I'm not even going to use an amp emulator.
Right.
I'm literally going DI out of my pedal board into the house.
Dude,
I mean, when we did the rig rundown for him in Milwaukee,
that's a bold move.
It's a bold move. But yeah, I was not a fan of his later era tone, especially live stuff. The studio stuff, Industrial Zen, that kind of thing. I was Blacklight. I believe that was the record I did the feature. I wrote the feature on was Blacklight. Because it was right after Paco, not too long after Paco died, when I interviewed him. And that was the band on that album that I did the rig rundown with him on. But yeah, it's it was very something to see him up close doing that stuff.
I want to put a pin in the tone and attack thing for a later discussion point that I want to come back to, because I'm curious what you think of a record that I think he has fantastic attack and tone.
Is it the one you messaged me?
Yes. Yeah, it is.
Love it.
Okay.
That one I love. Like,
we'll come back to that.
Okay.
So we talked about Miles. Here's another sideman thing. Tony Williams' lifetime, the album Emergency, especially. Man.
A+.
That is a dirty sounding record. If I remember correctly, there's actually in the liner notes of the CD that I have or had, there's actually, and in the liner notes of the LP, presumably, there's an apology for the sound quality. There's something happened with the tape machine. It's like it's less hi-fi than they anticipate it. That's what is so awesome. It's so raw and nasty. And John, like, there's so much about his playing that just sounds like pure, like, I'm going to say it, pure fretboard freedom, man. Like, just so open. He can go anywhere and he can do anything within this, like, really powerful creative vision and this really powerful musical voice that he created for himself. And I think that this is just like such a great example of him doing it. It's an early example of him just sounding in full control of just anything.
I've heard some people say that Emergency record was the start of jazz fusion.
Sure. Yeah.
Which you got to think is in 1969 is when that record came out, which I always get the feeling it's a 70s record.
Right. Oh, same. Yeah.
But it's a late 60s record, and there's elements of blues on that record. There's odd time stuff on that record. It's just the Via the Spectrum Road. Yeah. That's a killer. That might be my favorite track on the record. And Larry Young.
Larry Young is unbelievable.
I think a lot of people, that Unity record with Larry Young, obviously
Unity.
John's not on it, but that's a great record. But yeah, I would say the Emergency record might be my favorite early era McLaughlin stuff.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's unbeatable.
It's ripping.
All right. So now let's go in a different direction. Acoustic record.
Yep.
My Goals Beyond. It's a John McLaughlin album. Has a couple other folks on there, but he's playing acoustic guitar. You know that record?
Yes. Yep.
I am a big fan of that. And something for me that really like got me there. It's like I, heard McLaughlin, heard all this stuff at the same time, but then it's like, when you hear a lot of stuff at the same time, I think this is why we, especially on this podcast, but people in general, relate to a period of their life, relate to being a teenager and college or whatever, where you're hearing all this stuff and it can all come at you, but then you've got to like sift through it and contextualize what it all means and what's important and what's not, because that's your world, right? For me, I don't know if I had heard this record already, but hearing and specifically seeing Bill Frisell play the song Follow Your Heart, which became, that's like a signature tune for Frisell to play. Didn't realize it was in such an odd meter. That's in the real book too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like it's in there, and I look at it, I'm like, that boom, boom, bum, boom, boom, bum, right? And then I look at the chart, I'm like, whoa, this is really hard. It didn't sound hard, it sounded easy. And in Frisell's hands, he plays this just this really warm, sympathetic version. And it's not too different than McLaughlin's version, but it's different enough that I just like, I love these two versions differently. And hearing John on acoustic guitar playing that song, just, I think it's so powerful and such a great display of his acoustic playing that is not a big chopsy thing. That is just like it's about his writing.
And Iowa's own Charlie Hayden. Playing bass on that. Billy Cobham plays drums. Dave Liebman on flute and soprano. Like, that's not my favorite early solo McLaughlin record. I haven't spent a lot of time with it. I remember the Pork Pie Hat off of that and Follow Your Heart and Blue and Green.
There are some other great records. Extrapolation is a really great McLaughlin early record. For me, this one is just a vibe thing. It's a different vibe that sort of fills out the picture of what John McLaughlin's thing is,
Yeah. Dig it. All right, what's next?
Got to talk about Mahavishnu.
Mahavishnu. There's so much to talk about Mahavishnu. Mahavishnu could be its own episode.
It could be its own podcast.
I feel like the hits are the hits for a reason when it comes to Mahavishnu. Like
Intermounting Flame and Birds of Fire.
Lake of Fire.
Lake of Fire is great. Different thing, different reasons. Intermounting Flame, Birds of Fire, and you can go beyond that, and it's great too. Trident Sessions is unbelievable.
Yeah, I would say if you want to get into Mahavishnu, don't dig too deep. Just hit the first two albums.
Yeah,
that's going to give you everything you need to know. Past that, I would go for some live stuff. They play all the notes on that one, and then I would after that I would probably point people towards the live stuff. We were just listening to a live thing from Yale that's on streaming. That was great. But
for me, Mahavishnu, like, I think that when I first was sorting out, John's discography, John's catalog, John's body of work, thinking about the Miles stuff, it's like that's such this groovy thing. Like you said, it's a vibe thing. Mahavishnu is sort of like, it's not in the same sort of sonic world, but it's not too different because it's this 70s thing. There's keyboards and Jan Hammer sounds amazing. But
violin,
the
Jerry
violin
Goodman
is so good. But those, there's Cobham's groove, stuff like that. There's an overlapping sound world. The Venn diagram isn't like, it's a slight sliver, but then taking that thing and the thing that other fusion bands labeled as fusion don't really do is that it's a rock thing, and it's like a complicated rock thing that I feel like when people talk about, like, fusion can be a tricky thing. Holdsworth, Weather Report, all this stuff has a different angle on it than Mahavishnu. To me, Mahavishnu has more in common with like Yes or something, but it's almost like, because it's instrumental, it's almost like more palatable than a lot of those 70s prog bands. Like, I feel like anybody could get into Mahavishnu. It's not just like prog head or fusion nerd kind of territory. Like, Mahavishnu has a lot to offer, and it feels really good. And I think you can listen to it just for feel.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how much appreciation do you have for 80s Mahavishnu?
2, 3.
Okay.
I don't think it's bad.
We're on the same page.
I think
it's not bad.
I think it's
just
cool,
not...
but it's not. Those first 2 records are just so unbelievable. I'm neither of us are talking about tracks because I just don't think about it that way.
I don't either.
I don't think about those records. Those are bam, one piece, and it's raw, right?
Yeah.
It's still, as much as the band is so tight and they're doing these complicated tunes and stuff. It's so dirty. Like John's playing, he goes for all sorts of stuff. He's, making these big dirty bends, and that's rock and roll.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I think of those 2 just as kind of like standalone, Birds of Fire, the song, great. Mm-hmm. Dance of the Maya, cool. But it's like, I just put it on and just, again, soak up a little bit more of the vibe. I have seen transcriptions. I do have a Mahavishnu transcription book that I might have sent you at some time.
I have it from you, yeah.
And it was impressive just to like look at that while you're listening to it, but yeah, there's a reason why there's not a lot of Mahavishnu tribute bands around.
Yeah, there are some. There actually is one around here.
And of course, Philly.
They don't. I'm not talking about this band in particular. I forget.
The Birds of Fire.
I think Greg Bendian has one too. I think there's a like a hot shot fusion guy thing. I'm sure they're all great, but I don't think any of them. Like, I think part of that sound and like Mahavishnu in that first era, the classic Mahavishnu. They're playing big amps. They're playing, that was 70s rock. They're not. That doesn't exist on our stages today.
No.
So I don't know that it's like, I don't really want to see a tribute. I don't want to hear tight. I don't want to hear tight sounds playing that music. I want it to be wide open.
Right. All right. Okay. Mahavishnu.
So
TLDR, grab the first 2 records, proceed with caution after that. Go ahead.
That's right. At the same time, he's doing Mahavishnu, right?
Same time. He's putting out solo records.
He's putting out solo records. He's played with he's doing all this stuff. He gets into Indian music and immerses himself in studying the Veena, the Indian Veena. Okay. Starts dedicating himself to that. Decides he's going to start playing Indian music. Powerful choices, man. And then hooks up with Zakir Hussain, the recently deceased master of Indian of tabla, and they start Shakti together.
Yeah, 3 records in the 70s.
Yeah, 3. Yeah, the classic original period. He's going to play acoustic guitar. He gets this scalloped guitar. I talked to John about it. You want the details on the guitar? That's in that interview that I did in 2023. Great stuff in there. Gets this scallop neck guitar, and is just
pre-Yngwie.
Yeah,
let's pre-Yngwie scallop neck guitar.
When I first heard Shakti, I couldn't believe, like, I had never heard good acoustic guitar playing that fast. It was like reset all expectations for me on the instrument, right? Like, unbelievable. Everything that they recorded is great.
Yeah, it's, and even the last record, it's great. The one from 23.
Yep,
it's
different. He's playing electric there.
But the vibe is still the same.
Yep.
I will say we're going to shout out the Shakti Tiny Desk.
Oh man, yeah,
so good,
really great.
So good, and that I like. That to me is like a good gateway into the classical Indian influence music. Because sometimes outside of Shakti, if I listen to some of that, I don't know, I kind of glaze over sometimes because I don't get it.
I think seeing it, watching it happen, and watching it play out helps, because there's so much interaction. Just in general, not just the Shakti, with watching Indian music perform live. There's so much interaction between the players.
And when I interviewed John for a feature a number of years ago, I was talking about how sometimes I have difficulty getting into it. He's like, Jason, let me send you something. What's your address? And I gave him my address right there. Didn't think of it. I'm like, he's on the beach in Monaco. What are we doing, right? No kidding. 2 weeks later, I get an envelope in the mail with a burned CD full of some Indian. I'm blanking right now on who it was on some Indian music he wanted to turn me on to, and a little handwritten note which I have hanging on my wall.
Oh my God,
Jason, hope you enjoyed the rhythms. Love, John.
Dude,
hanging on my wall. Like, that's the kind of guy.
You still have the CD,
John,
right?
It's somewhere. Yes, somewhere. It's probably one of my desk drawers here. It's just like a nondescript burned CD. No, you would never know it's from John. It's not his music.
I don't. Okay, even better.
Yeah, it's
like,
just
I want to hear what
he
his
basically
stuff is.
made me a mixtape.
Yeah,
John McLaughlin made me a mixtape.
Please share that.
Okay.
Yeah. That's unbelievable,
yes,
dude.
I will
That's
look
amazing.
For it. It's around here somewhere.
I mean, I'm going to go out. I was saving this. Let me say it right now. I think John McLaughlin, okay, yes, he's on our 100 guitarist list. So we think he's one of the 100 guitar players we think you should know. He is one of the most important guitar players, period. And he is one of the absolute greatest practitioners of guitar music. Like, you have this thing straight from more than people that we're going to cover that are notably that are famous to be. I think that John, top 3. I'm not thinking about who the other people in the top, like, he is that incredible and changed it to me that, like, for you to have this mix from him, that's heavy stuff. That is so cool, dude.
I was like, what is going on? But it was also funny when we did the rig rundown.
Like, that's like having something from like Hendrix sent you that or something. Like, that's
right.
To me,
he could have burned this on his PC. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I really got a lot from him was we went up to Milwaukee to do the rig rundown, and we get there. A lot of times these are shot during sound check or before or after sound check. They're a little delayed getting there, so like, okay, we'll do the rig rundown after sound check. Cool. The band shows up, and it's with Gary Husband and the band this is his later era band. Mm-hmm. 2 drummers.
Awesome.
And the other drummer, well, it was Ranit, I think is the name of the one drummer. And then Gary Husband, there was 2 kits, I should say. And then Gary Husband went back and forth between keys and drums. And they're like, all right, we're going to do sound check, whatever. And they start playing a tune. And they have a full 2-hour rehearsal. And John was he was firm, he was direct, he was professional. Mm-hmm. But like, to watch somebody like that rehearse his band in the midst of a tour,
dude.
And he didn't care who was in the room watching. This is how professionals deal with the music. He's not worried about anybody's feelings, mm-hmm. right?
But probably also not. He's not being rude. He's probably just
no. But I would say, like, I was with Rebecca. Rebecca was feeling uncomfortable.
Oh wow.
You know, like she's like, "Is this?" I was like, "It's cool. I think it's cool." Like, that's how people at that level. This is how they get the work done.
Was it just like, you're missing this cue every night? You have to hit this cue.
There are several sections.
Again, catch that.
Yep. Run it again. We need to do this. Blah blah blah. Got it. Almost. Okay. Run it back again. Do it. And I got so much out of just watching that.
I bet.
Rehearsal.
Yeah.
Like, it was one of the best things I've ever seen working at Premier Guitar, was watching him rehearse his band.
Don't you wish you could have filmed that, like, to revisit it?
Dude, tell me about it. And I mean, but that's probably something he wouldn't want out there, right?
No, of course.
Right.
Yeah, nobody wants that out there. You want the performance out there.
So then we go and we do the interview. We take some shots of his gear. And at the time, he just had a pedal board he was playing his Godin, has pedal board going straight to the front of house, right? And so we're in his dressing room, and it's still, you can go watch it online. And we're in his dressing room, and I'm asking him questions, and he's walking me through his rig and his guitar and blah, blah. And I'm trying to be respectful of his time, right? So I talked to him for about 10 minutes, and I go to wrap up the interview. And he stops me. Nope. Jason, you're from Premier Guitar. You need to ask me what kind of strings I use. Right? It was so funny. And I was like, okay, John, what type of strings do you use? And he's, tells what kind of strings he uses, whatever. And, but he was just like full of joy. full of joy. And if I was like, I really need to talk to you for another 30 minutes, he'd be like, okay. I mean, he was totally, I don't know, maybe it's that because maybe he felt bad for having us wait there for 2 hours. I didn't feel bad about that. Whatever.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, because then Rebecca's like, do you want to stay for the show? Because we had like a 4-hour drive back home after we got done. I was like, no. I was like, I got enough from watching a 2-hour rehearsal. That's as a musician, that's what I needed to see,
Yeah.
And he also, here's a fun fact. I don't know if this is known, but Chick Corea was putting Return to Forever together, back together. And he called John for a recommendation. And John recommended Jimmy Herring for Return to Forever.
Oh, wow.
And Chick called Jimmy, and Jimmy, it just had too much work with Widespread. He had to turn it down.
That would have been sick.
That would have been crazy. But Jimmy Herring, to me, is like the natural torchbearer for John. He has that rock edge. He has the jazz chops.
I see what you're saying. Sure. I don't disagree. But
when what you just talked about, it has to like really rock. Jimmy, that's what Jimmy can do. Yeah, and he has all the vocabulary. I mean, I really wish I would have caught that tour. They made a live record where both bands, Jimmy's band and John's band, toured together and then played together.
So, moving forward beyond the 70s, we get in the 80s. John's doing a lot of different projects. There's some really cool solo records there. We can't talk about them all. One thing that I think encapsulates John McLaughlin 80s vibe is him playing. Okay, this is a recipe for schmaltz, right? The song jazz standard Cherokee on the Tonight Show with the Tonight Show band. Okay, there's video on YouTube. Like I said, recipe for schmaltz. Their big band arrangement of a standard on TV. John elevates this, and this is not to say anything bad about the Tonight Show band. This horn chart they're playing, totally crazy.
It's crazy,
but it's like a show band thing. It's super fast. It's swinging. It's they're playing on TV, and John comes out and just shreds, like truly, just like destroys the fabric of like the acoustic guitar universe, playing nylon string. So we're just gonna watch it together and just hang out and watch this video.
Yes, we're gonna do play by play. We're gonna hop in. If you want the uneditorialized version, you can find it on YouTube.
Yeah, you can find it.
I'm gonna start this right from the top because Johnny's intro is great. I love it, and the fact that props to Johnny for bringing stuff like this onto national. I remember once I seen the Dixie Dregs on the Tonight Show.
Oh wow!
I mean, yeah,
nice.
Like he'll do it.
Greats like Miles Davis, Chick Corea, and November 27th and 29th, he'll be performing his original composition, Concerto for Guitar and Orchestra at the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion. Would you welcome, please, John McLaughlin?
So let's get that straight. In order to promote a performance of him playing probably with the LA Philharmonic, his concerto, what are we going to do to promote that? Do you want to play a nice little gentle? No. You got that burning chart on Cherokee? Fire it up.
Yep.
Right? Now, we think he might be wireless here. Right? We think something might be under the back of his jacket.
Slick entrance, by the way.
Slick. The intro is basically... Do you think they had to work out the timing of how fast he was walking out? Because you have to sit down and then get ready to come in for the head.
Yeah, good point.
Probably an Abe Wechter nylon string?
I think so, yeah. I think that's that one.
Pretty simple head arrangement here.
Yep. And the horns are just like, they're fireworks.
Yeah.
Way up there on the neck.
Those trumpets, there's a vein about ready to pop out of that lead trumpet's head. He's a wrist picker. Coming from the wrist.
Yeah, his right hand position is odd.
And right there, you can see a front slanting pick angle. Yeah.
But real fluid.
Oh, yeah. Not a flipping pull off or hammer on in sight.
Look at that.
Forget it. Here's the real crazy horn stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, he's taking his little break.
Woo. Yep. Oh, man.
It's like comedically great.
Yeah. And you know what? The mix is real good too. He's there playing electrified nylon string.
Yep. And sounds fantastic.
Over a big band. How can he hear this? How could you hear?
No, I hadn't thought about that.
What you're playing.
Did we see a monitor? I don't think there's a monitor right there.
Even if there was, that big band's going full out. They're not holding back.
No.
Shout out to the Strat guy in the back there. Headphones. I bet you he's wearing headphones so he can hear John.
Oh, yeah, good call.
This was before in-ears. Whew. So how he plays the head is pretty easy.
Yeah.
That's not too bad. Whoops, there we go. Okay, that's
that.
maybe not.
Q takes it. There it is.
Woo.
And look at him. He had a great time.
Oh, man.
Oh, man.
That was it.
Just so great. Like,
whew.
Man, what a performance, right? I love how he does he's about to cue, and then he plays a and then big cue.
Bam. Oh, yeah. Big, you got to, yeah. So I would love to just know the backstory behind all this.
Yeah. Yeah, same.
Like, why did you pick that song?
Yeah,
why,
how did that,
you know?
I think it was what you said. It was like, we got to keep it. Let's keep it up. Let's keep it up. Don't do the concerto. What tune you guys know?
Yeah. Let's go. Cherokee? Sure. Let's go. All right. What's next?
Okay. So the record After the Rain, John Coltrane tribute, Elvin Jones on drums.
Yes.
The great B3 virtuoso from Philly, Joey DeFrancesco. Organ trio version of John Coltrane tunes. Now, John's tone and tack on this record is very different than anything else we've talked about.
That's right.
It's a lot smoother. There's a chorusy edges on everything he plays, but just a warm kind of, not dark, but a fat tone.
It's very Mike Sterney.
Yeah. Yeah, this is the first thing I would say where John's sound is like not something you've never heard before. Like in all these other things, in that Cherokee, it's like, who plays guitar like that? This is a little different. And by the way, the Cherokee stuff, I mean, that points to his stuff with Al Di Meola and Paco. Like that acoustic stuff, I should have put that on there. We didn't even touch on that. The acoustic stuff there is unbelievable. But anyway, we've moved on. But his tone here is more related to other players' tones, I think, maybe than some of this other stuff we've talked about. But I love this record.
Yeah, this is probably one of my favorite later era John McLaughlin records because because of the tone, really.
But this is another one of those things. There's no specific tune on here I would point to. You want to hear John McLaughlin play organ jazz? You want to hear him play John Coltrane tunes? Go right here.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable, but it's not like he plays some really shredding solos, but he plays some really like complimentary, like It's just like warm, sympathetic kind of stuff in here. It's a real full thing. And Joey's burning. They all
per usual. So yeah, this to me, like John McLaughlin, quote unquote, jazz guitarist.
Mm-hmm.
This would be the first stop for me.
Yeah.
You know, or he's playing, you know, take Coltrane, my favorite things, Naima, Afro Blue.
Classic stuff.
Classic stuff. Like if I were to transcribe some McLaughlin, it'd probably be from this record, I feel. Although I really like you heard the Bill Evans record?
Yeah. Yeah, it's great.
That's great. You talk about how to write for a group of 4 guitar players. You know, that's, I mean, there's so much, like, we haven't even talked about the guitar trio stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, the acoustic stuff with Al Di Meola and Paco de Lucia, great. Trio of Doom.
Oh, man. Yeah.
I mean, with Jaco.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's had so many little pockets.
Weird, but amazing.
Yeah, he's had so many little pockets of cool stuff.
So,
you know,
what did I put this list together?
Yes.
You didn't see it first.
No.
I put one more on here, which is Industrial Zen. And I put that on here. That's an album I didn't know. And I listened to putting this together. Also a great record. I listened to that. I was like, this is a crazy record. I love this too. What did I miss? Anything in here that you feel like is unrepresented?
The trio stuff.
The trio stuff, right?
I would say, hold on, let me glance through. Love, Devotion, Surrender.
Love, Devotion, Surrender is great. We talked about that a little bit on the Carlos episode. So that
we did. That would be another one. Another late era one, The Promise.
That's right.
It has that.
Really,
you remember
record.
that stereogram cover where you got to kind of like stare at it and give yourself an aneurysm to see the picture or whatever. I think the only time him and Jeff Beck played together.
Oh, interesting.
Beck's on that record. Brecker's on that record. Sting is on that record. Zakir Hussain, Vinnie Colaiuta, Dennis Chambers. That's a pretty stacked record. Thieves and Poets wasn't one of my favorites. That's his later one. Yeah, I think out of all of his more late era things, I think Industrial Zen and After the Rain are my favorites out of that. When it comes to collaborative stuff, okay, we talked about the trio, we talked about Zakir, John. I think there's a great one called Tokyo Live.
Oh yeah.
That's the one I was thinking of. That one has Joey DeFrancesco and Dennis Chambers.
Yeah.
Instead of Elvin. They don't do Coltrane tunes, but that was the one I was thinking that's a live, the Free Spirits.
I got to revisit that one. That's a great record.
That's a live one. That was good. The Heart of Things live in Paris. That's with the band with Matthew Garrison and Dennis Chambers. Kind of like his fusion band before, kind of the one with Gary Husband that made those later records. And still can't believe we're missing this one, the 5-piece band with Chick Corea, Kenny Garrett, Christian McBride, and Vinnie Colaiuta.
Oh yeah,
I remember when that came out. I was like, come on.
Yeah.
And on the record, Herbie Hancock sits in a silent way. like that one's really good.
Yeah.
There's a Live in San Francisco record from that tour with Jimmy Herring and the Invisible Whip, where they do Meeting of the Spirits and Birds of Fire and the Dance of Maya, Eternity's Breath and all that stuff. So he's probably one of the few guitar players that had such a long career where he doesn't really have too much of like
there's not
a creative dip. You know what I mean? Like
not peaks and valleys.
Really, no.
And also the Shakti, the Remember Shakti stuff, which is he just calls it all Shakti. When I interviewed him, I was like, so when you had Remember Shakti, he's like, it's all Shakti. That was the label, called it Remember Shakti. It's Shakti. I was like, okay, cool. That's how I think of it. That 90s stuff, he's advancing. He's advancing maybe is a weird way to put it, but it's a continuation of what Shakti was doing before, and it goes to a different place. He's not rehashing what that was. He's playing electric guitar. Srinivas is playing electric mandolin on some of that stuff. Unbelievable. But just hearing him and Zakir play that stuff, it keeps evolving. Different people are coming in, and so the Remember Shakti stuff is amazing. And then the latest Shakti album I thought was fantastic. I loved it. And I saw them. Did you see that tour? I forget.
No.
I saw them. They were amazing. And I thought that he'd have that sort of more softer board tone, direct tone. Man, he played distorted. Like, he played a dirty sound when I saw it. Not exclusively, but there was some stuff where he just like lit it up and was burning, man. Tons of distortion and attack in ways that I didn't think he still did. Something that's real interesting that I talked to him about in that interview and was sort of like a thing that I was really curious to get to the bottom of is, I forget what year it was now off the top of my head, but in the last 10 years, he retired. He said, I can't play anymore. My hands are messed up. Do my final tour and I'm done playing guitar. And a few years later, he's playing again.
Nothing. A little rest. One little rest. That's all we needed.
You know what solved it? He found he basically meditated it away. He ascribes his healing journey to this meditation practice he got into. Says he figured out how to meditate the pain away. Comes back, and hearing that, like, I was thinking, like, he's going to be missing a step. He's older, and he's had this experience where he stopped playing. He probably found a way to play with, maybe a little bit softer, maybe a little bit less hard on his body. No, man, he's just full fire. When he opens up, it's all there. Like, he's still Chop City. How is that? Like, I don't get it, man.
All right. Well, to close out,
I'm
going to do a quick drop the needle track for you.
Oh.
The year's 1972.
Okay.
If you can name the artist, guitar player is John McLaughlin, but it's not under his name.
I'm searching for someone who'll be true.
John McLaughlin wrote this song.
Who'll change my life for blue.
I mean, is that James Taylor?
That is James Gregory Taylor himself.
What is this?
It's off One Man Dog. It's the record with Don't Let Me Be Lonely Tonight, 1972.
And John wrote this tune.
James wrote a song called Someone, or John wrote a song called Someone. James recorded it, had John come in and play on the track.
I didn't know this at all. Yeah, it sounds like a John McLaughlin tune.
Right? How cool is that? How cool is that?
Wow. I had no idea.
So this dude invented jazz fusion, let's say. Played on a bunch of Miles records. Did all this stuff and had a song recorded by one of the greatest singer-songwriters of all time.
Man, and wow. And I will say,
Crazy.
Like you said about your interview experience, when I talked to him, he was one of the most engaging interview subjects.
Yeah.
From the top.
Absolutely.
He asked me my name. He wanted to know about me. He wanted to know where I lived. He, the whole time we were talking back and forth. Email me if you have questions. No, don't email me. Just here's my email address. You can ask me stuff. Like, just so open.
Yeah.
And here's this, like you said, did all this stuff and he's still going. He's still looking for cool stuff. Unbelievable. I just think he's one of the really, really, really one of the greatest.
High approval rating. High approval rating over here at 100 Guitarists HQ.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Well, thanks everybody for joining us. Thanks again to PRS for sponsoring this episode. Make sure you go out and check out what they have at prsguitars.com.
And don't forget, if you want to get at us, hit us at 100 Guitarists at premierguitar.com. And you can call or text 319-423-9734. And don't forget to rate, review, subscribe. follow us, catch us every week.
That's right. All right, everybody. We'll see you next week.
See you next week.